Hey guys, let's talk about my lack of self-control. Hey folks, my name is Jen, and today I have another book haul to share with you. So if any of you have been around for a little bit, you probably know that I put myself in a little bit of a book buying ban right after the holidays, because I have a lot of books that I got last year and a lot of books that I already had which were unread. So I just needed to really stop with the buying and this incessant need to have every book that I hear about that sounds amazing all at once. And you know that my goal was to not buy any books until July. So it's July. I posted a video, I think like a couple of weeks ago, showing you all what I purchased at Parnassus Book Service down the Cape, which is one of my favorite secondhand shops. So now I have some, also a big stack here of books that I bought online. A couple of these I purchased from Frugal Bookstore, which is a black-owned bookstore in West Roxbury, that I purchased some books from last summer. So I ended up getting a couple more books from them. I ended up getting one, which was a fairly newish release. I just ended up buying from Barnes & Noble online, and then the rest of them came from thrift books. A few of these are books that I have had my eye on for a while. A few are books that I have just heard everybody talking about on BookTube like crazy. A couple of them are books that I just saw on Alex from This Is Not a BookTube's recent video about 50 like sapphic recommended stories. So I have a couple of those, and one of them, another book on here, is a book that I have heard Emma at Bookish Princess talk about like incessantly, and I finally was like, screw it, I have to read this. I have to see what this is about. So yeah, there's a chunk. I should stop rambling and just tell you and show you what I grabbed. So here we go. And we're going to do this by genre, because I can't remember what order I got them all in, so we're going to go by genre, or what I feel is like the genre. So first up, have a couple of poetry books, or poetry related books. The first of which is No Matter the Wreckage by Sarah Kay. Honestly, I couldn't hold back any longer, and I read this yesterday and today. I finished it today during breakfast. So this is the debut poetry collection by Sarah Kay. That is her on the back. She is one of my absolute favorite living poets, and I just adore her poetry. If you have ever seen her TED Talk, she had a TED Talk several years ago in which she performed a couple of poems. She's also done a lot of performances. You can find most of them on YouTube. I remember falling in love with her poetry when I think I was in college. Yeah, I think I was definitely in college, and I watched a couple of her videos, and I've just always loved them, so I'm very happy to have been able to track down her poetry collection. I absolutely adored this. I'll definitely talk more about it in my July wrap-up. It feels like, on the one hand, getting a comforting hug from a friend, but on the other hand, also getting punched right in the fucking gut. It's such a wonderful collection. So the next book I grabbed that's poetry related is Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is a book told in verse. This is about two girls, Camino and Yahara. Camino lives in the Dominican Republic, and Yahara lives in New York City? Yes, New York City. And they have the same father. Little do they know at the time. They find this out when their father is killed in a plane crash, and it just completely alters and changes their whole existence. It sounds like it will be a great read. I have been hearing so much about this basically since it came out, so I'm very excited to get into this. I'm also very excited to get into this because I read The Poet X last year and fucking adored it, so I'm really happy to read more of Elizabeth Acevedo's writing. Next, I grabbed a play. It is the only play I picked up. It is A Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare. This is the Folger Shakespeare Library edition. I do, full disclosure, own a copy of A Midsummer Night's Dream. It is an antique copy from 1888, is like my pride and joy. I do love looking through that, but because it was published in 1888, that was back when people figured you were either smart enough to understand Shakespeare or smart enough to pretend you understood Shakespeare. You know, although I love Shakespeare and have read and seen his works before and took like a class about it in college, I'm not smart enough to understand Shakespeare at a glance. I'm just honestly not. So I need the footnotes. So I ended up getting this copy. So I have footnotes to help me with this. This is my favorite of his plays, and I honestly would like an easier time rereading it. So yeah. Alright, next is kind of, I guess, contemporary general fiction. For this, I grabbed From the Desk of Zoe Washington. This is by Janae Marks. This is all about Zoe Washington. She is super excited to be celebrating her 12th birthday. She has a food network, like baking competition she's getting ready to audition for. And she's got a lot going on when she receives a letter from her biological father, who has been in prison and she has never met him. He writes her a letter and basically says that he is innocent of the crime that he was convicted for. So now she has to figure out if there is some way to help him while also keeping it secret from her mother and stepfather that she has been talking to her biological father, and dealing with the difficulties of just being a 12-year-old. It sounds like it is going to be a really good read. I'm very excited to be picking this up. Also, 12-year-old ambitious and wanting to be in like a Food Network competition. I love that. I love baking shows, so I'm excited about that aspect too. So next up, I grabbed some nonfiction. The first of which is Karamo, My Story of Embracing Purpose, Healing, and Hope by Karamo Brown. That's adorable. So I love watching Queer Eye. It is like basically the only show out there that can bring me so much joy and also make me cry every single fucking episode. Out of all of the lovely boys, my favorite is definitely Karamo. So when I found out, I think it was like last year, that he had written this like memoir of his life, I really wanted to read it. I really wanted to know more about him and how he came about being the culture expert on Queer Eye. So very excited. And then I grabbed a couple of books about Cary Grant. One of my all-time favorite old movies is Charade. It was made in the 60s. It's like a mystery thriller / romantic comedy kind of thing. It stars both Cary Grant and the lovely, amazing Audrey Hepburn, who I adore. So I realized that, well, I do know some things about Audrey Hepburn, and I do have a memoir about her written by her son Sean, which I still need to read. I realized that I don't really know that much about Cary Grant. I knew that he had the whole transatlantic accent that everyone was wild for back in the day, and I knew that Cary Grant was actually not his real name. That was a name he came up with to make it in Hollywood, but I didn't really know anything about him in general. So I ended up, first up, grabbing just Cary Grant, the biography by Mark Elliott. Per everything that I'd heard, this is the most well-researched and best written biography that exists about Cary Grant, so had to pick that up first and foremost. Also, when I found that, I also found that his daughter and only child, Jennifer Grant, had written this book called Good Stuff, which is a reminiscence of her father, and decided, you know what could be more appropriate when learning about my favorite stars of the silver screen, but to have a memoir by their children. Both Audrey Hepburn and Cary Grant have a memoir written of by their children about them. I thought that was just, I don't know, the symmetry of it I loved, and I'm very excited to learn more about him. Speaking of, like, biographies, I also grabbed Duchess of Death, which is the unauthorized biography of Agatha Christie. This is written by Richard, oh my god, I lost his name, Richard Hack, which is funny, haha, Hack. This is, according to the cover, drawing from over 5,000 unpublished letters, notes, and documents. So recently I had read The Mystery of Miss Christie, which of course is a fictionalized version of Agatha Christie and her marriage to her first husband, Archie Christie, who was a fucknut, and also talking about the 11 days in which she disappeared, which is still like a mystery about where the hell did she go, what happened, that kind of thing. So in that, I found out some more details about her. Even though it is a fictionalized version, a lot of the details that were within there, minus probably some of the conversations and emotional whatevers that were within, it seems like those were somewhat factual, and I really didn't know that much about her in general other than the bare facts, and also more about her life when she was married to her second husband and they were on archaeological digs in the Middle East. So I want to know more, and this seems like it's a completely unbiased kind of look at her and her life and her work. So I'm curious. I'm very curious. Last, for nonfiction, I grabbed I Married a Venture. This is the lives of Martin and Osa Johnson by Osa Johnson. So this is all about, as it says, Martin and Osa Johnson. Martin was a adventurous, like, world-traveled photographer. Osa was this girl from a small town in Kansas? Yes. They met, fell in love, and ended up becoming like this pair of adventurers, going and taking tons of wildlife photography. I think they went a lot of places, mostly focused in like Africa, and this is all about their lives. I have heard a lot about this and I am pretty interested. Alright, next up I got a couple of romances. First up, I grabbed Pride, which is a Pride and Prejudice remix by Evie Savoy. This, I mean, all you have to say to me basically is that it's a Pride and Prejudice retelling and I'm gonna be fucking jazzed about it. And look at the inside cover. Is it gorgeous or what? This is about Zuri, who with her family lives in this neighborhood that is beginning to be gentrified. She is very proud of her neighborhood, proud of her heritage. And then in waltzes the very rich Darcy family, both of whose sons are particularly hot, apparently. And she ends up clashing with the son Darius, and slowly they do manage to find some kind of common ground, though. I am pretty jazzed about this. I've been wanting to read this ever since I found out about it like a couple of years ago, so I'm very, very excited to be reading this soon. I grabbed An Extraordinary Union by Alyssa Cole. This is a novel of the Civil War. It follows Elle, who was a former slave who managed to find her freedom in Massachusetts? Yes, in Massachusetts. Hey! And she actually kind of trades this in, though, to help the Union Army by going back to the South to spy for them. It also follows Malcolm, who is a Pinkerton detective. And I'm fascinated by the Pinkerton detectives. Don't really know that much about what they're about in general, but the whole thing sounds very like romantic and fascinating. So all you had to say was she's spying for the Union Army and he's a Pinkerton detective, and I was fucking sold on this. Also, it's written by Alyssa Cole, and I loved the shit out of her Reluctant Royal series that I read last year, so hell yeah. But this is basically two undercover agents who end up having to join forces to like try to help the war effort, and I don't really go for Civil War stories that much. I am so jazzed about this though. Alright, if this has changed slightly, I am so sorry. I talk too fucking much, so my camera was full and I had to like fix some things. Okay, anyway, now we get into the couple of mysteries that I got. First up is Sadie by Courtney Summers. I have heard that the audiobook is even cooler than the actual physical copy because a lot of it is told from as if you are listening to a podcast, which sounds fascinating as hell, but I really do want to read like an actual hard copy because I can't always focus with audiobooks. This is about a girl named Sadie. She's now basically having to raise her younger sister, Maddie, who is subsequently murdered by a serial killer, and then Sadie ends up going missing as well. And a lot of this story also has to do with a guy named West McCrae, who hosts basically a podcast, and he is trying to follow the clues and figure out who this serial killer is, where has Sadie gone, is she also a victim, or is she tracking this motherfucker down? Like, it's basically following that whole thing. As someone who listens to a shit ton of true crime podcasts, I am very excited about this. So the next one also deals with podcasts. It is called I Hope You're Listening by Tom Ryan. This is all about Dee. When Dee was a teenager, her and her best friend went into the woods, and she is known as the one who came out of the woods. Basically, she is the girl who survived. Her friend was never seen again. It is years later, and she can't really remember all that happened. She doesn't really know what happened to her friend. And to deal with her guilt, she ends up coming up with a podcast in which she tries to help anonymously with online sleuths in finding missing persons and solving cases. But recently, girls have started to go missing again in her town, and she has to kind of face the past and see if she can help solve this case. So again, love true crime podcast. Super excited about this. Super excited about, like, I'm very happy. Next, I grabbed a couple of horror books. The first of which is Bridge of Souls by Victoria Schwab. This is, of course, book 3 in the City of Ghosts series. If you don't know anything about the City of Ghosts series, it is a middle grade horror series featuring Cassie. Cassie had a near-death experience like a year or so ago, and because of that, she now has the ability to open the veil, basically, and go into the spirit world and see and converse with ghosts. She also has a ghostly best friend who is now just connected with her due to this near-death experience. Her and her best friend are traveling around the world now with her parents, who are starring on this paranormal ghost show. Her mom's super into the paranormal. Her dad's more the historian slash skeptic kind of personality. The first book takes place in Edinburgh, Scotland, the second in Paris, France, and the third book is in New Orleans, in Louisiana, and I have to admit, I am fairly obsessed with New Orleans. I am fascinated by it. It is one of the most haunted cities in the country. I am so fucking jazzed that this book is going to take place there, and I'm very excited, very excited. Next up, I grabbed How to Hang a Witch. This is by Adriana Mather. This is all about Samantha Mather, who ends up moving to Salem, Massachusetts, and has an interesting start to school. When your last name is Mather and you are in fact a great and so on granddaughter of Cotton Mather, who was responsible for convicting and murdering a shit ton of women and a man because apparently they were witches, although there's no evidence that they even were, and even if they were, there's no reason to fucking do that, you assholes. Anyway, when that is like your family connection, Salem is a weird place to be, especially when there is a clique within the school called the Descendants, who are a group of girls who are in fact descended from those who were killed as a part of the witch trials. Things get a little more complicated when she finds she is bothered by a teenage ghost and also a centuries-old curse that could possibly destroy everything she holds dear. So that's pretty much super on par for me. We got witches, we got ghosts, we got curses, we got some weird stuff about the past and the present, and also just fascinating is Adriana Mather is the writer, and she actually is a descendant of Cotton Mather, as far as I know. So yeah, that's a great hook. That is a great hook for a fucking book. Next, I grabbed sci-fi. I know, me? Sci-fi? What the fuck is this? No, I ended up picking up the Thrawn Trilogy by Timothy Zahn. I read this back in high school and had absolutely fucking adored this trilogy, and I saw someone mentioning it several months ago, and it just reminded me that I just loved this series. So I decided to pick it up. It consists of Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, and The Last Command. This takes place 5 years after the events of Return of the Jedi. Han and Leia are married, and Leia is expecting twins. She is trying to navigate the politics of the new empire not New Empire, New Republic, excuse me. The New Republic that they have all built. Han and Chewie are off, like, have like a mission thing. I can't remember what the mission is, but I know there's like something that they're trying to help with. And Luke is a fully trained Jedi Knight at this point, and he is preparing to go off across the galaxy to try to find others who can use the Force so he can try to rebuild the Jedi Temple. There is also the last dregs of the Empire still living in like little pockets of this universe, and they are thirsty for revenge. I remember how much I loved this in high school. I am so very excited to be reading this, especially since, honestly, did not like the new movies. I know, don't come for me. It's a thing. And I think that thing was because I'd read these and accepted it as canon and fucking loved it, and then that just ruined everything. So whatever, we'll move on past this. Okay. Anyway, super jazzed to read this, super jazzed to talk about this in the future. It's fucking great, and I really hope that it holds up to the love that I had for it when I was like 16. So yeah. So we have a couple of fantasy books that I grabbed. The first of which is Aaaaand and the End of Time. This is by Roshana Chokshi. This is one of the Rick Riordan Presents series. This is all about Aaaaand. Her mother curates the Museum of Ancient Indian Art and Culture. She goes to a private school and ends up making up stories to try to make her life sound just as exciting and privileged as her richer classmates who are always jetting off to exotic places on vacation or etc. Shit happens though when 3 of her schoolmates show up at the museum and try to call her out on her exaggerated stories, and in the course of Aaaaand trying to impress them, she ends up unleashing this like ancient demon who, it says, is intent on awakening the god of destruction. So that ain't fucking great. I am super excited about this, and not just because I want that like exciting fantastical adventure with like mystical etc and everything, but also I admittedly know basically nothing about Indian lore or culture at all. I can name like 2 deities off the top of my head, and I'm sure that my view of them is totally filtered through what Hollywood has told me, and I don't actually know shit about what they're actually like or what they actually represent. So to get actual like true representation through like a fictionalized fantastical adventure, I'm jazzed. I'm super excited. I'm really hoping that this is going to be amazing. It sounds like it is definitely going to be, and I know there's other books in the series which I almost grabbed them, but then I was like, girl, you bought like 33 books in 1 month. You need to like not do that right now. Next I grabbed up The Never Tilting World by Rin Chupeco. This is about a world where half of it exists in eternal night and the other half exists in eternal day. There are 2 twin sisters who live on either end of this planet, but there is just this spectral evil forces that appear to be trying to destroy things, so each must set off with their partners to try to come together and figure out what is going on and stop these forces from destroying their world. So yeah, I'm very excited. So this sounds pretty awesome. And then I also grabbed The Girl Who Speaks Bear. This is a middle grade book by Sophie Anderson. This is all about Yanka. Am I pronouncing that correctly? I am so sorry if I'm not pronouncing this correctly. I don't know if it's Yanka or Yanka. I'm going to say Yanka. Yonka is 12 years old. She's never felt like she really fits in with her village. She was found in a bear's cave as a baby, and but her foster mom just treats her like she is her own daughter. Eventually, though, she starts kind of turning into a bear, and she has to go into the woods to figure out what her origins are, why this is happening, and why the animals of the forest are just always seeming to call out to her. This sounds like it's going to be such a fantastical time, and I love bears. Bears are my favorite animal of like all fucking time. I have a bear tattoo. I'm just obsessed with them. You can see bears are right here on my wall. A girl who talks to a bear and she was adopted by a bear and I don't know. I'm so excited. Lastly, I grabbed a couple of graphic novels. My battery is blinking. We're gonna go super fucking fast. Alright, so the first book is Seance Tea Party by Ramana Yee. This is all about a young girl who doesn't really want to grow up. She's still holding on to childhood fun and imagination and etc., while all of her other friends have kind of moved on to being more interested in other things rather than just playing with toys and running through the woods and etc. She ends up summoning a ghost who becomes her playmate, basically. I think this is going to be about like how hard it is to grow up and holding on to childhood, and it's probably going to break my heart into a million pieces, but it sounds really cute. The art looks really cute. I'm excited. And the last book is The Prince and the Dressmaker by Jen Wang. You probably know all about it. Everyone's been talking about it for like a while. This is all about Frances, who is a talented young dressmaker. She ends up befriending Prince Sebastian, who has a liking for dressing up in dresses. And Frances is basically the only one who knows his secret and has kind of helped him become this like fantastical, what is her name? Lady Crystalia. She is the hottest fashion icon in the world. So, yeah. This sounds absolutely adorable. The artwork, again, looks really cute, and I'm very excited to read this. That is it. My battery is going to die. So thank you for watching. I will see you guys next time. Bye.